Hello everyone, Lytro Storm here, and today I'm continuing What If Molly Stayed with the Group. This is part 3 and also the finale, so if you haven't seen the first 2 parts, check them out using the link in the description and comment section. But with all that being said, let's get into the video now. So for A New Frontier, we've got 2 different backstories for Clementine. She's either with Molly or with Molly and Kenny. If she's with Molly, then nothing changes from the Alone version other than Clem gets to keep her fingers because Molly is there to have her back. If she's with Molly and Kenny, then Kenny still gets paralyzed by a car crash and dies, leaving only Molly and Clem anyway. Sorry to the Kenny fans, but this is probably the most realistic outcome, let's be real. I don't think Molly being there is gonna make Kenny wear his seatbelt. They would at some point be found by Ava, who tells them of the New Frontier. Molly is skeptical of this group, so she doesn't want to go, but Clem is up to your choice. But I do think no matter what, they will still end up joining them out of desperation. That's what Clem did in the actual game, even if you deny it, so I think that it's probably not too far-fetched. But when they deny AJ medicine, Molly becomes furious. This is the same stuff they did at Crawford, throwing out the sick, elderly, and children. Molly makes a plan to steal the supplies, but does it without Clem. So when she is caught, Clem and AJ get to stay safe while she leaves. This is the best way for them to be safe, as staying out on the road won't do them any good, and Molly's also been questioning whether or not she's good enough to protect Clem due to the events of Season 2's ending. On top of that, a toddler's needs are way too specific for them to keep AJ alive out there. Clementine can either respect Molly's wishes or not. If she doesn't, then Molly yells at her and says that she has to keep her promise. The promise to Lee to keep Clementine safe no matter what. So, in the end, Clementine is forced to stay with the New Frontier, and this means that Molly is basically taking up Clementine's role in the original Season 3. Now that she's been exiled from the New Frontier, she's going to be roaming around just trying to survive, basically out on her own once again, which I think is really cool because it's her going back to how she was before. Right after just having to develop all these skills to keep Clementine safe as well and watch over AJ as well, and after losing so much and doing so much else in Season 2. However, the downside of this is that because of how similar Season 3 Clem is to Molly in this situation, I really don't see anything changing this season. It really sucks to say, but when you look at Molly, how she was before she met Clem, and then you look at Clem in Season 3, Clem is basically on her own again, and she tries to push away her feelings and emotions and tries to push away other people so she can keep herself alone. Now Molly in Season 1 is a bit more hardened, where even then she really didn't seem to care about most people, even after she joined the group, but now she's had literal years protecting Clementine and growing bonds with other people like Kenny and whatnot, if you had him. So her being on her own now is also going to feel kind of bad, and she's going to try and shove that away, but also eventually come to terms with the fact that she does need other people. So it's still a cool character arc, but unfortunately it's the same character arc Clem has this season, so like, yeah. Obviously there would be dialogue differences because it's Molly, but Clem was all stoic and on her own, which is how Molly would be as well. So just imagine the whole season, but with Molly replacing Clem. I know this really sucks to say, but like, I'm trying to keep things realistic, and I don't want to have to cover all the events of Season 3 with like the tiny little dialogue changes and whatnot. So I'll just give you guys some things that change overall with the season so we can move forward. The main differences I'd see is that Molly doesn't use guns often since she has Hilda, so she wouldn't kill that guy who gave Clem faulty bullets. This means her and Javi don't get locked up, but that really isn't all too important. And maybe we could even see Molly use a gun once or twice just to see like her reaction to it and whatnot, and see if she's actually good with it, or maybe you could have a gag where she's like really bad with guns, or she just doesn't like them in general. I don't know, but we're about to go into the final season, which has basically no guns, so if we're gonna have that for her, it needs to be in this season. Additionally, when Molly asks Lingard where AJ is, she'd also be asking for Clem as well. You could even have her choose to go after Gabe and David, or save Richmond based on Clem's flashbacks still. Or you can base it on the ending Clem got in Season 2. Either way, hopefully nobody gets upset about me kind of glossing over Season 3. I just really don't see a need to go into every small detail if it all ends up the same, so I'm skipping to the stuff where things actually change to keep it interesting for you guys. I understand if it kind of feels like a cop-out, but this is just the way it is. I try to keep things realistic, I'm sorry. But anyway, now that I've made that caveat, let's go ahead and continue on to Season 4. When Molly leaves Richmond to go off to McCarroll Ranch and find Clem and AJ, this will be similar to how Clem did it. However, the key difference is that Clem would be defending the ranch alongside Eddie and the others, since she would be part of the New Frontier. So Molly and Clem both see each other, and Clem stops Eddie from firing on Molly. And what does this mean? Eddie will survive. Clementine explains that they're under attack and that they need to get AJ out of there. So Eddie joins the group, and he, Clem, and Molly enter the nursery and find the one woman Clem did in canon. They tell her that they need to escape, so she lets them take AJ in the car and says that she'll hold the enemies off. The gang leaves, with Molly reuniting with AJ and getting to know Eddie over this course of time. I honestly think Eddie becoming a main character, like, just because Molly stayed with the group is really cool, as it takes what we got from 400 Days and actually takes a little Easter egg that we got in the final season and makes it actually mean something. So it's not just like, oh hey, there's Eddie, and then Clem kills him. Now he's actually with the gang. It's just like a neat little thing that doesn't really happen often in What Ifs. I really like when things like this happen. And so some time passes and we see a grown-up Clem driving with Molly beside her and Eddie and AJ in the back seats. AJ is gonna feel a lot safer due to having 2 extra people defending him all these years, so I doubt he'd be as edgy as he was originally. The 4 stop at a train station, eventually getting attacked by walkers and being saved by Marlon and Violet. They get taken back to the school where they all regroup and meet everyone. From there, the night plays out the same for the most part. Although, one thing I really didn't mention in my What If Lee and What If Kenny Survived thing is that this group doesn't really like adults. I had kind of left that out. I kind of forgot, I'll be real. So I do think that they would be distant to the adults whenever they save them, but I do still think that they would save them because they're not gonna like just pick up Clem and AJ and then just like steal them and then leave the adults behind. That's really weird, especially because it could make them enemies. So when they are there, they're just gonna be a little awkward at first, but obviously throughout those 2 stories, Lee and Kenny, they grow to like appreciate each other more and like bond and help each other to defeat the raiders. And the same thing would be said here. Like everybody wouldn't like Molly at first because she's an adult and they all have prejudice against them, but eventually they would grow to like her and Eddie. So yeah, just a cool thing I thought I would cover that I had forgotten to cover in previous What Ifs where things like this has happened. Moving on. The next day, Clem and AJ would either go hunting or go fishing. Eddie and Molly do whatever Clem chose not to do. After that, they realize that they didn't have enough, so they make a plan to go back to the train station. Molly would be the one to notice the bell and mention how they're going old school for this one. She picks up the bell and gives it to Lewis, telling him to make noise to attract the walkers. Then her, Clem, and AJ push forward, with Eddie and Violet keeping watch. As the 3 were gathering the food, they would hear a struggle outside. Molly tells Clem and AJ not to stop getting the food and runs out to see what's going on. Eddie and Violet are both fighting off some guy who we know as Abel. Half of the walkers that Lewis was distracting begin approaching them due to the struggle, so Molly tells Violet and Eddie to fend them off. Molly is forced back in, and so Abel tells her what he wants. He wants some of the food, or he's gonna shoot her. AJ comes up with his gun held, and so Molly now pushes Abel out of the window pretty much immediately. After that, she tells Clem and AJ to get the bags and start running. As they go outside, Molly saves Eddie from a few walkers, and they run to the school. But along the way, Eddie reveals that he had been bitten on the arm. He and Violet had to fend off a lot of walkers for a long time, so it makes sense that one of them would be bitten. Ollie then says that they should remove it, as they know it would work based on Reggie. They can cut it off now and risk him dying of blood loss or walkers due to his screams, or they can wait until they get to the school, but the map shows that it's going to be a long way from where they came, so it might be too late by then. This leaves Clementine with a choice to make. If they cut it off now, then the group is chased by a lot of walkers, but they leave after a certain bit. The gang makes it to the school where Eddie is patched up properly by Ruby and needs a lot of rest. If Clementine didn't cut it off, then they would go to the school and do it right away. Eddie is then taken by Ruby here as well. But either way, Brody is going to be even more angry, and Marlon is as well. Sure, they got a lot of food, but they found someone, and one of them got bitten. Clementine and Molly put their group in direct danger. It could have easily been Violet in Eddie's position. But they enjoy their meal and go to bed, hoping that Eddie is okay. Clementine wakes up after hearing Marlon and Brody arguing and goes to check it out. After Clem sees them, Marlon kills Brody and traps her down there. Clem is able to escape and sees the whole group is outside with Marlon. He's telling them that Clementine murdered Brody. Molly and AJ don't believe him, and Clem comes up with her own story. As everyone is distracted, Molly charges at Marlon and they immediately start fighting, with Clementine joining in to help. With both of them just basically beating the brakes off of Marlon, he is forced to give up, but is still shot in the head by AJ. The votes come in and are just enough to kick Molly and Clem's group out of the school. However, Eddie is still recovering from all the blood loss and whatnot from the walker bite, and if you waited to cut his arm off at the school, well then he's in even worse shape. But regardless, Lewis tells Ruby to just finish up whatever she's working on with Eddie and try to get him stable enough to where he can be on his feet and leave. She does so, and he's left in, like I said, in a pretty bad condition. But Molly, Eddie, Clem, and AJ all get sent out into the forest and are then found by Lily and Abel. The two try to get them to join the Delta. It'd be nice to have so many new recruits, even if one of them only has one arm. Abel kind of takes offense to that, as now he only has one arm because Molly shoved him into the walkers no matter what. Clementine obviously recognizes Lily and vice versa, but Molly doesn't know who Lily is because she joined in the group pretty much shortly after Lily dipped. So Clementine would have to explain that they know each other and that she was part of their original group back way at the beginning. But no matter what, Molly does not like Lily one bit right off the bat. Clem will then either tell Violet to shoot Lily or won't. Either way, Molly would off-guard Abel and start running with everyone else. I do think that with bigger targets, AJ wouldn't be the one shot. Rather, it would be Molly who takes some of the blasts. This injures her, so they are saved by James. If you cut Eddie's arm off in the forest, James will say that he led walkers away from people last night. Of course, Clem responds by thanking him, as he saved them twice. In the morning, the four hobble back to the school, with James being there as well. He then leaves and they are brought in. With Molly being down for a while, she would be entrusting Clem to lead their group to victory. She does get healed over the time skip, so by the time of the battle, she is ready. Lily and her people bust in, and the fight begins. Eddie really can't use a bow with one arm, so he's given a makeshift weapon made by Mitch and Willie, which I think is pretty neat and fits their characters. Right from the beginning, Omar is shot in the leg with an arrow, and Mitch is stabbed in the neck by Lily. From there, Clem and Molly face off against Abel and manage to beat him with the help of AJ. He falls off the balcony and they climb down to help out in the rest of the fights. Clementine fights Lily, but once again, Molly's aiding her. After a while, Clem realizes that she needs to save either Lewis or Violet, and so Molly is left 1v1ing Lily for a bit, which I think would lead to some cool exchanges in dialogue. I'm not exactly sure what it would be, but these two characters seem like they would have a lot of dissonance with each other. Clem tries to save either Lewis or Violet, with Eddie also saving whoever you don't choose. And one thing I didn't actually write down, but I think it would be a cool idea to have Eddie possibly die depending on the choice you make back when you're cutting his arm off. There's no like real right answer, like should you cut his arm off sooner, he could die from blood loss on the way, or he could get eaten by walkers because, you know, you're putting everyone in danger by cutting it off in an open forest, or waiting, you know, might lead to it being too late and him dying anyway. So what I think they could do in that scenario is like have it be to where you choose and that doesn't necessarily decide the outcome. But a further thing there, like maybe the walkers come in and depending on what you do, Eddie can just die or like be left behind. And then if you didn't cut his arm off, there's a chance for like him to get like his arm infected or something on the way. I don't know. That's just kind of a cool idea. I didn't really have like a secondary idea for the one where you wait, so I'm kind of just spitballing. But I think it would be neat, since Eddie isn't like a huge part of the story, sadly, to maybe have him die depending on what you do and depending on if you fail certain things. And so in that scenario where you would have him dead, he wouldn't actually save either Lewis or Violet, so it would be Clem saving one person like in canon. But anyway, that's just something I thought I should add in because I thought it might be a cool detail. Lily and her people now retreat, making the battle mostly a success. After this, Molly and Clem interrogate Abel and learn of the Delta ship. They then plan to save everyone, recruiting James's herd of walkers. The squad makes their attack, and they save Omar and Asim during this. Molly and Clem rematch Lily, with the two coming out on top in the end, which I think would be a really cool battle. Clementine then chooses whether AJ spares Lily or shoots her. If he spares her, then James dies like in canon. The ship then explodes, and we move on to the final episode. The squad manages to get out of there, with Eddie, Ten, and Molly going with Clementine and Lewis and Violet. If they end up fighting James, both Molly and Clem together will be able to stop him. They are just a dynamic duo, beating the brakes off of everybody this season. The group then leaves the cave afterward and are forced to fight Minerva on the bridge. Here, Molly and Clem would be enough to slam her, with Eddie also helping out if he's there, now that he's got an arm weapon. She would be bitten by the walkers again, and AJ decides whether to shoot Ten or not. If he shoots him, then he dies and everyone else escapes, but if he doesn't, then Eddie will die, saving Ten. And this is of course if you have Eddie, with that little added thing that I threw in there earlier. So now Lewis/Violet and Eddie/Ten will get separated from the group. During the Minerva fight, Clem has the backing of Molly and potentially Eddie, so there's no way that she's getting that brutal cut that Minerva gave her in canon. And even if that were the case, on their way back to the school, Molly would have her back so she wouldn't get bit. So Clementine gets to keep her leg. And with that ending, everything turns out quite a bit happier for our group. Louis and Violet are both alive and aren't blind or missing a tongue. Oh, unless I guess you had Eddie dead, so then one of them would be dead because they saved 10. Eddie or 10 will survive, and Clementine has her leg. This means that Molly successfully did her job and kept her promise to Lee to keep Clementine safe. So I think with that, if you do have Eddie alive, maybe along the course of the season, we could see somewhat of like a slight romance build between Eddie and Molly, as I think that would be a cute pairing. So maybe by the end, it ends with like Molly kissing Eddie on the cheek if he's alive or something. I don't know. But anyway, speaking of fulfilling promises, I've now fulfilled my promise to finish the series, so I'm gonna leave you guys with that. I hope you guys enjoyed all 3 parts of the story. It was crazy to write. I actually really liked writing Molly's character. She's just such an interesting person, and I've wanted to see what would happen if she actually stuck around for the longest time. I really wish I could have done more with A New Frontier, but realistically, not much would change. I'm sorry. But let me know your guys' favorite part of the series, as I think all 3 are really good. But as always, tell me if you like this series, comment your requests for future videos, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.